The LEC offseason is finally finished, and in this video today, we're going to be recapping every single roster move that happened this offseason, every single report, every single player change, all that good stuff that the Sheep Esports team has been working insanely hard on this entire offseason, all brought to you guys now here in one place in case you missed out on anything, or just to give you a nice little recap of all the craziness that's happened over the past couple of weeks. Of course, first, just want to mention real quick, Holy, if you guys are looking to pick up some great tasting energy drinks that also just so happen to be healthier than the competition, definitely check out that first link in the description below. Everything we've been doing here on Sheep Esports, on the website, Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff is powered by Holy. So buying some Holy is a great, awesome way to help support us while also getting a really nice product. You can use discount code SE5 to get €5 off your first order, or SE10 to get 10% off your entire basket. Check out the first link in the description below. Use whatever discount's going to be the best for you, but buy some Holy today. With that being said, let's go. The first roster that I did want to talk about is Team Vitality. They actually had some of the first moves of the entire offseason. Only two moves here. They have replaced Photon and VTO with Nagneko and Chayek in the top and mid lane. These are two guys that are coming up from the ERLs. So we'll have to see how their potential, how they end up making that transition from the ERLs up into the LEC. Obviously, one of the biggest moves for them, obviously this wasn't a change in the offseason for Vitality, but bringing back Karzi and Hillisang, that was going to be really good as well, because obviously they have a little bit of a younger team, less experienced team. So bringing back two veterans should hopefully be really, really solid in the bot lane, and are two very great players in their own right, is really cool for Team Vitality to be able to bring back Karzi and Hillisang at the same time. But only two roster changes here, and nothing too insane as far as like new players coming into Team Vitality. Next, we have Team Heretics. This team changed a lot this offseason. They shook everything up. They replaced Wonder, Yankos, Zyru, and Trimby with just one single player returning from their most recent roster. That is Flockhead, obviously coming back. But we have Carlson up in the top lane. I believe he's coming in from the Spanish ERL. We have Shio coming in, which is actually a pretty big and exciting pickup for them in the jungle. We have Kamilu, who's one of the most interesting players in the entire offseason. One of the players I'm most excited to see how he's going to perform in the LEC this next season, because he's actually skipping tier 2 entirely. He's coming up from the tier 3s in Europe all the way up to the LEC. Very young, very hyped up prospect. I hope he is legit. I hope he is really fun and exciting to watch, but it should definitely be an interesting story. Very entertaining either way. And then we have Stend coming in as the new support for Team Heretics. Next up, we have Team BDS. This team also had a very, very crazy offseason with some big pickups, but also some maybe questionable moves. Irrelevant was one of the most highly sought-after players this offseason. They have Irrelevant coming in to replace Adam. Shio, which was a very big loss for Team BDS, he's going to be replaced by 113, which is, again, where people are maybe leaving some question mark pings or whatever. 113 is a guy we've seen in the LEC before. I don't know. He's very aggressive. He's very in your face. He's either going to make some big plays or he's going to int. We'll have to see what version of him we get. But losing Shio is going to be a big loss, and 113, at least on paper, might be one of the biggest downgrades in the entire LEC offseason. We do have Nuke returning, we have Ice returning, and then we have Perus, who's going to be replacing Labrov. Obviously, Labrov move on to G2, who we'll be talking about in a little bit, and I think Perus, we had actually talked about, was the number one option for G2, but Team BDS is able to bring him up to their LEC roster, and yeah, so that's pretty crazy. Some big pickups in Irrelevant Perus, maybe a little bit more questionable one in 113, but this team looks pretty strong on paper, and they have a chance to maybe compete for that upper tier in the LEC now after a really cool offseason that they had. Next up, we have SK Gaming. This team, I think, is maybe one of the teams that people are the least excited about. I think had one of the worst off seasons, some really big downgrades on paper. They lost Irrelevant, they lost Niski, and they lost Luan. And we have GiantX coming into the top lane for Irrelevant, which again, I think most people see as maybe one of the biggest, maybe the biggest downgrade on paper from the LEC offseason. We have Reeker coming in for Niski, which again, I think Reeker is pretty good. I think he was very, very strong in the ERLs once again. I think he definitely deserves a spot in the LEC, but still a pretty big downgrade, at least on paper, from Niski. And then we have Loopy coming in, who I think is actually an upgrade in the support role. I think he'll have some really, really nice synergy with Rahel, obviously. But yeah, overall, I still don't think many people are excited about this SK offseason, but those were the three moves that they made. Next, we have Rogue, who finally got their offseason done. We were waiting on them for so long, but they made some pretty crazy moves. They replaced Finn, Marcoon, Comp, and Zolas with Adam in the top lane, which is maybe the most controversial pick. Obviously, very, very talented player, but brings a little bit of off-the-rift baggage along with him. But I still think people are excited about Adam coming back. Malrong, who is a guy who's been on Rogue before, now coming back as well. Having Adam and Malrong both together on the same team, going to be chaos, going to be insanity, going to be some high octane action. We have Patrick coming in as the new AD carry replacing Comp, and then Execute, or Jonghoon, as some of you might know him as well, coming in as a new support for this team. Obviously, Larson, the only returning member from the previous Rogue rosters, but also you have to remember Rogue's also trying to sell their slot, or trying to sell their entire organization, I guess. So this might be, by the time of the start of the season, this might be a different org or a different team name altogether, so kind of keep that in mind. Next up, we have Koi, who they only made one change, but it was a big one. They're bringing back Merwin, bringing back Ilyoyo, bringing back Supa, bringing back Alvaro, but Frescowie is out and Jojo Pune is in. This is, I believe, the first ever LCS talent to be playing in the LEC, like native North American LCS talent to be playing in the LEC. Going to be very crazy to see. Obviously, Jojo Pune, huge story, him leaving Cloud9 and heading to Koi, having him team up with the mid-young duo of Ilyoyo and Jojo Pune, going to be super fun to watch, but it's also going to be very, very interesting to see how the first ever, like I said, NA LCS player is going to come over and do in the LEC. But yeah, just one move for Koi, but it was a big one. They did not disappoint this offseason. Next up, we have K-Corp, who had a very, very crazy offseason. They, in total, are only making 2 changes. That's Yike, one of the biggest players of the entire offseason. Again, Yike leaving G2, being out on the open market. Tons of teams were interested in him, but K-Corp is able to land Yike to replace Closer. And then we have Callista being brought up from the LFL to replace Upset, one of the most hyped prospects in the LEC right now. K-Corp fans really love this guy. They think he has a chance to come in and be an absolute beast, and he's going to be paired up with, obviously, Targamas in the bot lane, who's going to be the same. Vladdy in the mid lane is going to be the same. And then Kana coming back was a little bit of a questionable one as well. There was chances that maybe Kana was not going to return to K-Corp, not return to Europe at all, maybe go back to the LCK or whatever, but Kana returning in the top lane is very, very big. So overall, I think K-Corp had a very strong offseason, bringing in Yike and Kalist, but obviously Upset is going to be some big shoes to fill, and there was maybe some question marks about whether they're going to bring Targamas back or not as well, but that's what K-Corp did. Next up, we have GiantX, who had a very big offseason as well. They replaced the Antonio, Yuhan, Patrick, and Ignar. So a ton of changes here. Obviously, the only guy they're bringing back is Jackie's, who's kind of like the center point of this franchise, the guy they're building around for the future. We have Lot coming into the top lane. A lot of question marks there. We'll have to see how good he's able to come in and be coming in from the ERLs. We have Closer coming into the jungle. Again, tons of question marks about him. Obviously, Closer's had a very, very strong career up until this point, but he hasn't necessarily been in the best form as of late, so we'll have to see how good Closer is going to be. And obviously Closer being paired up with 2 younger and more inexperienced solo laners, he's going to really need to help them out, and probably they're going to rely on him a lot. But also bring in the Fnatic bot lane of Noah and June to replace Patrick and Ignar was a huge pickup for GiantX, so that's very, very cool that they're bringing in a strong, stable bot lane to go with some more inexperienced and younger solo laners that are probably going to be a lot more volatile. G2, perhaps one of the biggest pieces of the entire offseason, was really crazy for them. There's going to be a lot of argument of whether or not G2 got better or worse or whatever this offseason, but they did lose Yike and Mickey X, and those ended up being 2 of the biggest free agents of the entire offseason, since they were being moved on to from G2, I believe, with no buyouts as well for both those players. But G2 went and got Skewmond in the jungle to replace Yike, and then they got Lebrov as their new support to replace Mickey. And again, Yike was maybe the best jungler in the LEC previously, at least top 2 or 3. Mickey, the best Western support of all time. So G2 trying to replace both those guys is obviously very, very, very big shoes to fill. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Skewmond and Lebrov, because the expectation for G2 isn't just to win every single split, to win every single championship. It's to go to Worlds and MSI and this new tournament and to actually do some damage. So Skewmond and Lebrov are going to have a lot of pressure on their backs right off the bat to get things done, to come in and be very, very strong. Obviously, G2's taking some big risks replacing Yike and Mickey, but obviously they want to, be even better and stronger than they were this season. And finally, the last team we are covering in this video today is going to be Fnatic. Just a couple of moves for them. Obviously, we talked about how Noah and June went to GiantX, so there was going to be 2 big holes in this Fnatic lineup, 2 pieces they need to replace, and they decided to go with Upset and Mickey, 2 historic and iconic players in the LEC. I think Fnatic had a very, very strong offseason here. Again, Fnatic, their bot lane, Noah and June, was already very strong, and replacing them was not going to be easy, but bringing in Upset and Mickey, I think, is a great way to do that. They also re-signed Oscar, so yeah, Fnatic is locked in and reloaded for another season. Obviously, their fans also want them to win a championship this year. They want them to go to Worlds and do something. So that pressure is going to be on Fnatic and their management, their coaching staff, and everybody this year as well. Fnatic also went out and got Grabs, which I do think was a pretty big pickup for their coaching staff as well. But that is pretty much every video today, guys. That is the recap and review of every single roster change that happened in the LEC this offseason, and all 10 of the 2025 rosters that are getting ready to compete in the next LCS, or the next LEC split, not LCS split, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. But pretty much every video today, guys. Hopefully catch the next one. Until then, peace.